Good afternoon and welcome to the Poker Player Alliance chat with Senator Alfonse D'Amato. This afternoon we're going to start with some brief remarks from the Senator and then we'll open it up to questions from you, our members. But first, some remarks from Senator D'Amato.
Well, thank you very much, Ann. Listen, this is great being here, and I tell you, it beats the old-style politics. It beats going door to door to carry your message. And I'm not asking for your vote, but really I want to thank those of you who have joined the Poker Players Alliance, encourage those who have not joined the PPA to do just that, and I'm really delighted to be the chairman of the Poker Players Alliance. So let me tell you, when the PPA came to me and asked whether I would be supportive of their efforts, it wasn't difficult. I love the game, the sport, the contest of poker. It's something I grew up with. It's something I played in the Senate regularly. I play now. And it's something that I think American people have a right to continue to do and not to feel like criminals, particularly in their own homes. And why shouldn't they be allowed to use the Internet? We're in the modern day, the modern age. And so in the dead of night, we saw an assault take place like never before against the 20 million plus Americans who played poker over the Internet. Now, what took place? Well, Congress was considering very, very important legislation to protect the homes and the ports of this country. And this bill, a bill called the Port Security Act, was up for consideration. In the dead of night, several members of the Congress, the former leader of the Senate, unfortunately, from my party, I think made a terrible, terrible mistake, kept people from debating and seeing the merits of a provision, and they put this bill on the Port Security Act, an amendment, literally at midnight, and the bill could not be held up, the Port Security Act. It was too important. It was enacted into law. And this infamous piece of legislation called the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act became law. No debate, no consideration, no trying to consider, is there a better way of controlling some of the problems of gambling? No. And it sailed through. And now people are being arrested throughout the country for playing poker. We see it taking place in states. We see people who are now being deprived of the right in their own home to wager on poker. But yet somehow the poker player has been discriminated against, because if someone wants to use the Internet to bet on horse races, that's legal. If they want to bet on lotteries, why, that's legal. If they want to bet on fantasy sports, that's legal. But if you want to play poker, even a 2-cent poker game, and we used to have those, or nickel and dime game, or a quarter and half, that suddenly becomes criminal. Banks and other financial institutions would face great criminal penalties if they were to provide the mechanism for transferring money. And so what we have seen is legitimate poker operators close down. And so what happens? Now we have a situation where there's no real regulation, no scrutiny of these poker games, and you do have the chance of unscrupulous operators operating off of the United States, coming into existence and not providing the kind of scrutiny and protection that we once wanted to have. Now, this legislation may be well intended, because some say, you know, what happens with the problem gambler? What about teenagers? Well, let me suggest, and what the Poker Players Alliance is doing now, is educating members of the Congress that the way to do this is not to ban it, as we did during Prohibition days. They tried to ban alcohol, and what took place? You started a whole illegal industry. You didn't regulate. You had people who would drink stuff that was poisonous. Today there's no real regulation, and you have offshore operators who can operate unscrupulous games without the benefit of having the authorities review. And By the way, with our computer programs and computer programs, you can regulate those games. You can see to it, as the English are doing, and 70 other countries, that the games are honest. You can build in mechanisms to reduce youngsters and keep teenagers from becoming involved, and control problem gamblers. So you see, it's something that can be regulated, should be regulated, but shouldn't be banned, because people are going to continue to play. Now they're going to play outside of the law. It doesn't make sense. And we're using precious resources that should be used in tracking down terrorists, in tracking down drug money and money launderers. They're now involved in tracking down who may be using the internet to play poker. Silly. We are very hopeful, though, that through your cooperation, the Poker Players Association Alliance, and bringing more people in, getting friends and neighbors who want to play poker to join, that we can get Congress to turn this around. And right now, there are a number of legislative efforts that we are seeking to work with. As a matter of fact, Congressman Barney Frank, very powerful chairman of the Financial Services Committee in the House of Representatives, is coming forth with legislation next week, which promises to amend this law, do away with this law, this absolutely unenforceable, silly law, and permit, among other games, poker to be played over the internet. We certainly hope that we'll be able to rally congressmen and senators to recognize that this ban will not work and that there's a better way. As well-intentioned as it might have been, it is a bill that will create more problems than it solves. And let me just bring you up to date. In the last 2 months alone, the Poker Players Alliance has gone from 60,000 members to over 320,000 members, and we're growing. And we hope to use this grassroots group to carry the message. And the message is one of saying, let people who want to play poker do it legitimately, have the game properly regulated, raise revenues, by the way, that which could go into the billions of dollars for this country, for the essential programs that we need, and not create an illegal industry that benefits no one but illegal operators. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the president of the Poker Players Alliance, and someone who's been fighting in the trenches from state to state, as well as walking the halls of Congress, Michael Bolserac, our president. Mike, I'm glad you could be with us.
And thank you for joining us, Alfonse. We really appreciate the power and the intensity that you bring to the table, your knowledge of Congress, ability to talk to our legislators and create something good, to represent the Poker Players Alliance, the average poker player with a great love of the game, and bring that to Capitol Hill. So I'd like to, we've got a web chat here going, and we'd like to get to some questions that our members have asked of us. So if we could hear some.
First question is from Randy of San Francisco. What is the true justification of attaching the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act to the Port Security Bill, and how could Congress let this happen?
Well, Randy, as I said before, this was done in the dead of night. There were only several members, the Speaker of the House, the Majority Leader, and it should not have been done. I don't think that more than a handful of members even knew that this ludicrous act had been made part of this huge bill, the bill to protect our ports against terrorists, that this amendment was put in that bans internet poker playing. I mean, horrific, terrible. So there was no justification for it. Let me say, it's going to be a tough battle, but we can win it if we get our membership galvanized, because what we intend to do is to build up our membership and carry the word to our individual congressmen and senators that there's a better way of controlling problem gamblers and teenage gamblers. And that's not just to try to ban it, but to regulate it, to police it. And the industry and government can do that together.